get down to it, a quick reminder that if you want things in your inbox, we'll put things in your inbox with the Hump Day News newsletter. It's a regular wrap-up of coverage past and content to come, with links, tips, taters, and tots, served up fresh, nice, and hot. And if you're subscribed to the newsletter but not signed up for the Backyard, shame on you. The Backyard is a members-only area at Hump Day News where you'll find all that's best and bizarre at HDN. We've got Mapley Power Rankings, letters from the editor, our incel advice column, and more. Sign up at the Hump Day News to log in and enjoy. All right, I'm Mike Gutierrez. I'm the editor at Hump Day News, and I'm here with fellow contributor Sarah Prusik, and we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming segment on DIY music. I had a chance to sit down with John Quinlan, one of the organizers at Dud's Dungeon. It's a DIY space in Weymouth, Mass. And I loved what he had to say. It sounds like a really cool spot. And Sarah, I know you've frequented some DIY music spaces in the past. Any particular memories from times gone by that jump out to you now?
Oh dear, yes. There are many a DIY space, or at least there was when we lived in Chicago back in the 2010s.
It's a hell of a town.
It's a hell of a town. One in particular sticks out in my mind, which was called Ball Hall. Shout out to Ball Hall. Ooh. And those folks, if you're still doing that. However, I do think that it was a highly illegal operation, and they were certainly going above capacity for fire code.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on. I remember that they had like this interior scaffolding, which they were treating basically like 7, 8, 9-story bunk beds.
Yeah.
It was amazing, like art project to look at, but the people living there was pretty crazy. It was one of those like really high ceilinged, like warehousey type spaces. It was super cool though.
Longest bathroom line I think I've ever stood in for a concert.
Right.
Because it's just like a little tiny bathroom for an apartment with a toilet.
And people were not always going to the bathroom in there.
They were not always using it to just go to the bathroom. I'll put it that way.
But this is one thing that came up between me and John, not to, and not to do any spoilers here, but the difference between, some of the stresses that like more urban destination type DIY spaces deal with versus more suburban or even like further out into the country type spaces, just a little bit of less law enforcement intervention in the latter cases. But without further ado, let's hear what John Quinlan of Dud's Dungeon has to say. This is the Humpcast. I'm Mike Gutierrez, editor at Hump Day News, and I'm here with John Quinlan, who is the lead organizer, or maybe the only organizer, for Dud's Dungeon, a DIY venue. But we'll find out from him. John, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Michael. This is very cool. I appreciate it.
I appreciate having you here. I've been seeing Dud's Dungeon shows advertised for a while, and I haven't gotten there yet, but I want to. And this is sort of my stepping stone to getting there, sort of hearing what's up. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing over there? How long have you been putting together shows there?
Let's see. So, well, first of all, it's definitely a team effort. I lead the charge on like booking for sure and handling social media for the most part. But my girlfriend Rocky and my brother Jake, they're heavily involved. They keep it all going. They kind of almost make it what it is, even if I do a lot of the hands-on work. And then also all of our friends that are always there. So Dud's Dungeon's a great big team, really, and that's probably why we've been able to throw stuff for 5 years next month.
5 year anniversary.
Is that summer
5-year anniversary party?
Yes, summer 2019.
Nice.
Kinda. Not really though. There will be our friend Mike, who people will see at most dungeon shows, running the doors or something. It's his birthday is the same weekend, so we'll probably have like a private party.
Sure.
Or, I don't know. it'll be recognized, but we won't make a big public hullabaloo
No,
about
no big
fireworks.
hullabaloo. Well, tell me a little more about like it's like to go to a dungeon show. Like what's this experience going to be like when you show up? What can you expect?
I think first of all, you have to commit to coming to Weymouth to see a DIY show. So
Nice.
that's number one. You have to, so, the crowd there is going to be people that are making that effort. So everyone there, for the most part, really is there for the music. They're, they're, you know, going out of their way to come see good music. And I think that's always been our goal is, for people to trust that they're going to see good music. So,
Mm.
we handpick our lineups. Sometimes we'll do a collaboration with another venue or scene, and then we'll go like half and half on the lineup. But for the most part, like we're handpicking who people are going to hear at our spot, and I think that's just built like a trust that they're going to get a good show and see good music. And that's why, certain people will go out of their way. They'll come to Weymouth on a Friday night.
Well, it's like a destination wedding, you know. At least you're not
Yeah.
like anyone go to Aruba.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So I
I
don't know.
had a temp job in Wales once. It was like a real estate like thing. It was awful. But that's nothing against Wayne. That's a temp job. Um,
Awesome.
so
Let's go Weymouth.
what's the next show coming up? Is it the one you mentioned? The
Let's see. Oh no. So July 5th, that'll be we're doing a weekender with a DIY venue in Burlington, Vermont, which
Mhm.
just means that one night will be at Dud's, July 5th, Friday, and then night two will be at this place in Vermont called Spud Spot. And they're cool, throwing cool shows, doing DIY stuff. So, you know,
Weekend. Never heard of that. Is that something you guys done before?
yeah, we kind of started doing that the end of last year. We kind of made an effort to do that, I think, where we're gonna like put on a weekend of shows with another venue or scene, and then each of us will pick like say two bands for each night. So it's four bands each night, half picked by one venue, half picked by the other venue, and we just do a whole weekend together. So we've done like I don't know, probably more than five of those now. We've done a good handful, and they've all been super fun to work with other people like that.
Nice. So, is Dud's Dungeon, do you think of it as like exclusively DIY space kind of event organizer, or do you guys ever make it out to quote unquote like business venue type places, like a Jungle or a Midway or a Union Tavern type thing?
Yeah, for sure. So like the dungeon itself as a place is, basement venue, Weymouth, how we started, but also just like through the name Dud's Dungeon, we'll throw shows anywhere. And definitely in the past like year and a half have made more of an effort to do that. So yeah, all the time. You can catch us at the Jungle or most recently Deep Cuts in Medford was really awesome. Um,
Nice.
Anywhere really big or small, we're happy to throw shows, put a dungeon show on anywhere.
You know, another thing I've seen you guys have been doing that I've really enjoyed is your YouTube page. You do great like concert show filming. It looks like it looks super like uh slick, you know? Like I like I love like the overlay graphics, you know, it's got this kind of homemade but like polished thing going for it, and the bands look and sound great. Has that always been a part of what the whole dungeon thing has been, like those videos as well?
Not from the start, but that's something that, I've always wanted to do. I've, made videos and stuff since I was a kid, but music, that's all pretty new to me just from the dungeon. I'm not a musician at all. I'm just strictly a fan. So, yeah, being involved in the music world really only came with the dungeon. So, I like to combine it into all the worlds I already had going on. So one of them being like video. Um, I knew it was always something I wanted to do somehow, but it wasn't until I met Jacob Keplinger. Um, he's a really good guy. he's
Hmm.
he's the front man of the band Free Rock, and they're a really great band.
Well, you broke up
And
a little there. I don't
he,
want to miss that. Which band that
oh, did it
was?
broke up? Okay, so Jacob, he's the front man of the band Free Rock, and they're a great
Free
band,
Rock. Okay.
prolific band. Um, so he's an audio whiz, and once we got together, we kind of started talking about doing live sessions in the dungeon, like a tiny desk or like a
Hmm.
KEXP audio tree, all these things, something like that, but in the dungeon, which was like a dream come true for me. I just didn't have the tools to do that. I don't know anything about audio. And my friend Richard, who I've known since high school, he's like a camera video editing whiz. And we got him on board. So they really brought the dream to life, those two guys, and they put all the really heavy lifting into the live sessions on YouTube. Um, we started filming them, I think, in 2022, and we didn't start rolling them out until last October.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they look great. Do you tend to just sort of shoot them at the same time that you're putting on a show, or do you like book these as like special dates that the bands come out to film?
Yeah, they're actually totally separate from the shows we do. There's
Hmm.
not a live audience outside of maybe like our friends or the band's friends, whoever's around. But yeah, totally different from the shows. We haven't really gotten into recording our concerts in that kind of quality yet. So this is like totally separate, just like a studio session. Bands will come in and yeah, we'll record them. And then we put it on YouTube and streaming services. And it's literally a dream come true for me to be able to do that. Like, I
That's
love it.
awesome. We'll keep them coming because they look and sound really good. You guys are a great sort of collaborative partnership there.
Yeah, that's all Jacob and Richard. They make it sound and look better than I could have imagined our first swing at this would be.
Nice. Well, let me tell you that another reason I'm excited to have you on the podcast now is this other question. I raised it before we started recording here, but um, I'm always curious about as someone who writes about music and writes about live music shows, like what DIY event organizers you know what their like perspective is when it comes to coverage of their shows, because it can be like a sensitive thing sometimes. Some DIY shows are at places where there's not supposed to be live performance, or under certain rules and restrictions and so forth. So yeah, let me just throw that question to you, like both from your perspective, like from your immediate perspective, doing Doug's Dungeon shows, like what is the situation? Like, do you have free reign to put on the types of shows that you want to, and you're not worried about coverage, the leaking to the wrong people? And then from the perspective of like if you think there's like a general rule of that people who write about music should follow when it comes to covering DIY music and events.
Yeah.
If that wasn't too long of a question.
No, not too long of a
Pardon.
question. Not too long of a question. I think I got some thoughts on this. It's
Yeah.
good. Um, I'll speak from my like personal perspective through the dungeon. Um, but definitely recognize that our perspective is extremely different than most DIY venues. So I guess we'll talk rule of thumb first. I'd say rule of thumb would just be don't cover a DIY show publicly, like one that's being held in a space that isn't like, a small public venue, you know what I mean? Like a
Mhm.
true DIY underground show, I wouldn't cover that without talking to the showrunners first. I think that's like number one rule of thumb is like, get in touch. If you want to cover it, talk to the people who are throwing it, and then, they will probably tell you what they're comfortable with.
Mhm.
And I think that would just, I think yeah, just have that conversation, and I think everyone will be able to get on the same page. So rule of thumb would just be like, do yeah, reach out first.
That makes sense.
Yeah, for us, you know, we don't face the same challenges that a traditional DIY venue in the city will, for a number of different reasons. Because in the city, I mean, obviously it's a lot more heavily policed, and they know kind of about underground shows, like they know that that's a
Mhm.
thing. Um, and so they got to be a lot more careful. And a lot of these, people throwing shows, they're doing it um, without their like they have landlords most likely, and they're
Mhm.
doing it without them knowing most likely. So that's a whole thing. And that these are all the stuff that we don't have to deal with being in the suburbs. Um, so we're extremely lucky in that. That's a big part of the longevity is that we do these in my parents' basement in the house we grew up in
Mhm.
in Weymouth. So, the homeowners are our parents, and they love it. They love to
Are
be
they up?
able
Are they like
to
upstairs when the show is happening?
yeah, and they'll come down for a bit too. My mom
Yeah.
especially, people that come to dungeon shows probably know Jody by now, so shout out Jody. And then my dad, he's a bit more shy, but our friends and I, we call him Dud, so that's where the name comes from.
Oh,
It's his name.
okay.
So Dud's Dungeon. Um, you won't catch him down in the shows too often, but he'll be there. He'll be upstairs.
Dud, is that like a play on dad, or is that just like
Yeah,
completely
I, I
separate?
I think in high school, I guess so. I think that's where it must come from. Like people calling their mom Mum, so we
Oh, okay.
called our dad Dud. And then yeah, when we needed a name, we were like Dud's Dungeon. I don't
Nice.
know,
So no,
but
no static from a landlord.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
and you're definitely right. Like the police are definitely like more hypersensitive about DIY shows, and they do make it a kind of a regular to be done item to check in on that scene and make sure, well, try to eliminate it outright if they can, but they don't have, I
yeah,
mean, you always hear stories about like these weird people, like, I don't know, like on Reddit, like someone like asking around about shows, like DIY shows, and it's like, who is this? And then,
mhm,
it turns out to be like an undercover cop or something.
yeah,
That happens like kind of you always hear stories about that semi-regularly. Um, but okay, so Dud
yeah.
and Joe are upstairs. Um, and this conversation also kind of apropos of a recent Globe article. Well, it's like about 3 months back. That was about DIY spaces, and there was some reporting from DIY spaces. So whether or not the reporter got like asked the showrunners for permission to do that coverage, probably did.
Hmm.
The Globe does like pretty good, hitting the bar for journalistic ethics. But whether they said yes or not, definitely one of the blowbacks to that article being published in the Globe was just increased awareness and maybe increased pressure on law enforcement to like take a closer look at these things. So it's tough. Like what one venue, if they're giving a thumbs up, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to, there might be unintended side effects there. Um,
That's very true. I think yeah. So like how I said with the rule of thumb being to ask the venue and then they'll do what's comfortable. I guess in that situation we saw an instance where maybe the venue was a little too comfortable and
yeah, I mean, did you read the
uh
article? I
I
will
did
post the
did
link
read
to
the
the article.
article back when it came out. It
Yeah.
was disappointing to say the
Yeah, I'll
least.
put the link in the episode notes for people who want to sort of like think on this a little further.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a good topic for reflection, especially if you're interested in DIY shows.
yeah. Especially, the nature of DIY spaces is really just like flash in the pan. It's there and then it's not, then it's a new one and then it's not. So, a lot of people, especially in the city, where people are going to these shows kind of like regardless because there's such a volume of, people that want to go to them. So people are having great success without much experience. So, it's good to, I don't really know where exactly I'm going with that other than like there's a lot of learning to be done in a short time span if you're doing this stuff in the city. And there's a lot on your shoulders. Like I'm sure those kids that had the Globe do the article thought that that would be a really cool, fun thing because I don't know. But then when it's actually out there, you kind of see how it's not such a cool, fun thing at all. And it's
Well, unintended
not.
consequences sometimes. And I feel like I'd be remiss having this conversation and talking about DIY spaces in the city without mentioning the issues that the Democracy Center is having. It looks like a space that was available in Cambridge for a long time for DIY shows is under threat of losing out on that space as the organization that runs the building is kind of pivoting in a different direction, and it's not entirely clear whether that future includes the possibility of DIY shows as it has for so long. So just to underscore that notion, like these spaces are precarious, precious, and a long-running one like the Democracy Center is especially rare. And now we see that even that is under threat of extinction. John, I want to thank you for spending some time with the Humpcast.
Yeah.
Call it instead of the podcast because we're so clever. But for sure, is there anything you want to shout out before we take off?
Yeah, I guess I'll just, let you know what's on the horizon for Duds. Yeah. So yeah, show coming up July 5th, our weekender with Spud Spot. That'll be very fun and cool. And then we're kind of hunkering down for our yearly festival, Dungeon Fest. That'll be September 21st. We're going to be announcing the lineup sometime in July. It'll be 16 bands and artists all day long. Two stages. Yeah, 2 stages outside, music all day long. Vendors.
Man, are Dud and Jody ready for this or what?
Oh, they're ready for this. We do it every year. This will be our 4th, maybe.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. The first show we ever threw was kind of like an all-day festival. We didn't know what we were doing, but it was a big success, and that's probably what kept us going forever. So come to Dungeon Fest, I guess, on September 21st.
All right, Dungeon Fest, September 21st, and
yep.
The weekender on at the start of July.
Yep, July 5th and 6th, Weymouth and Burlington, Vermont.
All right, thanks again, John, and man, I'll try to get up to Dungeon Fest for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe right. I should ask. Can I cover it?
Yeah, you can cover it.
All right.
We'll chat about the parameters.
We'll chat later. All right. Thanks again, John, and you have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Michael. I love Hump Day News.
All right. Well, I'll just stop the recording now. But...
All right, Sarah and I are back. Thanks again to John Quinlan for sitting in for a Humpcast. We're turning now to a friend of the podcast, friend of the Humpcast, Ted Chase, editor at QRO Magazine. And he hung out to talk a little bit about his recent coverage of Governor's Ball. It's a fest in New York City, and we did a little compare and contrast with some of my coverage of Boston Calling this past May. Sarah, did you take part in Boston Calling at all?
I took a very small part in Boston Calling when you were attending, and I realized that I had locked myself out of our apartment, so I did have to take an Uber there and back to get the key from you.
I know.
And I did see the crowds, and I heard a little bit of music.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful day. It might have been the most beautiful day all year in Boston.
Well, I want to compliment the Boston Calling people for how easy it was to get in and out. You know, some of these places, it's like no re-entrance sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And so that could be a big problem. But
When I saw that I had left my key and that you were at Boston Calling, the heart-sinking feeling was very intense because I realized that about festivals. You weren't just at the mall.
Yeah.
You were at a secure environment.
Yeah, some venues do that, but Boston Calling was pretty cool with it. So now everyone knows we're not one of those people that have like a key hidden in some weird fake rock. We got nothing.
We got nothing,
we got no
folks.
backups.
No breaking into this place.
All right, with that, let's turn it over to Ted Chase. Let's hear what Ted has to say.
Hi, Ted.
Okay. Hey, here we are. I'm Mike Gutierrez at Hump Day News. I'm sitting here virtually with Ted Chase, an editor at QRO Magazine, a online site that covers everything about music, almost anywhere in the world, at least Europe, right? You do based in New York City, do a lot of national coverage and some Europe coverage occasion. Is that right?
Yeah, it sort of goes in and out depending on what's available and such things.
Yeah. What about South America? Any coverage?
I've never covered anything in South America, I don't think. I know there's some things that happen there, but
you always hear about bands that like US bands that go down there and play in front of like 120,000 people. Like the Ramones had a huge show there.
It's because bands rarely play down there because it's hard to do a circuit because sort of the cities are so far away and they don't know whether they'll, they don't have an idea of what their audience might be, and they have to work with local promoters. Like a big thing that Lollapalooza does is now they've got ones in, I know they've one in Argentina and Brazil. They may have one in Chile too, that can draw a lot of those bands. But yeah, like sometimes it'll just be like a random thing. If a band will play there, and they'll play there once, every 10 years or something.
Right. So if you don't make that show, you might not see them ever again.
Yeah. And the stadiums, the places they have in sort of South America, a lot of them are, soccer, football stadiums, or they're very big outdoor places. And especially in South America also, they will do it, in our winter, Northern Hemisphere winter, Southern Hemisphere summer, because it's off time. They also do that in Australia too, New Zealand.
Yes, which is also in the Southern Hemisphere by many people's estimation.
Yeah.
All right, so we wanted to get together and talk about big stuff, big festivals. Maybe not as big as some of those like 100,000 people shows, but big summer festivals. Well, maybe not necessarily summer, but so big mainstream festivals. What are some of the ones that we were going to look at, Ted?
Well, I just did just at Governor's Ball in New York. It was out at Flushing Meadows Park in Queens, right near Citi Field where the Mets play. And I know you were at Boston Calling, which was at Harvard Athletic Complex.
Harvard Athletic Complex, really just a romantic venue, but a beautiful grounds after they set it up, and big enough to hold 4 stages and a lot of music fans. And that was at the end of May. And Governor's Ball, what was that, like the first weekend, second weekend of June?
Second weekend, June 7th to 9th.
Yeah.
Because I think so it was like 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks after. Yours was probably on Memorial Day weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I think because I wanted to sort of catch the kids. I mean, one thing I would say just before we start is we're not the target audience. Like you and I are not the target audience for these festivals. We're middle, they distinctly.
I don't know. I push back on that a little, Ted. Look at the headliners. At least for Boston Calling, you had the Killers close out on Sunday night, and they were at Governor's Ball too, right?
Yeah. I mean, the Killers they were distinctly the oldest act at Governor's Ball. Like, they're interesting in that they came up 20 years ago. It was literally the day before they played Governor's Ball was the 20th anniversary of Hot Fuss, their first record, the one that had Mr. Brightside, and Jenny was a friend of mine. Somebody told me. So, but that they're still able to headline big festivals and still have like young fans, that it, much more so than most of the acts that came up.
There's some intergenerational appeal.
Yeah, that it's sort of it's kind of impressive that they've been able to stay at that level. I think because they were always a little more pop than, I don't know, like the Strokes or something.
Yeah. And I keep pushing back on Boston Calling, at least. He wasn't the headliner, but Trey Anastasio was there with a classic.
Yeah, I did notice that. Boston Calling, I think, wasn't as pitched as much as I think as Governor's Ball. Governor's Ball gets a lot of high school kids city, and I think whereas Boston Calling, it's Boston. It's the last week right when college kids are about to leave. I think it pitches more towards college. I mean, that's only like that can only be like a 4-year difference, but it's a certain.
That's a big difference. That can make a big difference.
Yeah, and at that age, and there's certain images of what high school kids listen to versus what college kids listen to. The college,
right. Right. Remember before you went to college and you were like, "Oh, college kids just have the coolest music."
Yeah.
I mean, and then you get to college and you're like, kind of goes both ways.
Yeah, I mean, that's what before it was even alternative rock, before it was indie music, before it was alternative rock, it was called college. I mean, it was college radio because it was college radio, but then the college rock. I just saw an interview. Janine Garofalo interviewed Michael Stipe of REM, and she mentioned, that they were one of the first bands to be called college rock because they did start at in Athens, Georgia. Anyways. So yeah, there's a certain difference, but it's still we're both well out of college.
Yeah. So you're saying that there's sort of a younger demographic that I'm hearing that they're targeting for Governor's Ball versus what I observed at Boston Calling. And I would say another signifier there of like that difference would be might be the tickets. Like, what was your sense on the ticket prices for one-day outing to Governor's Ball?
I honestly didn't look.
This is a trap you fall into when you get listed for these.
I didn't look at.
I didn't look at the prices, but it's really important in terms of understanding who the real market for this is. I would guess that the one-day passes were something that a high school student could feasibly afford without
oh no, I mean these were tickets that
busting the bank.
I mean, but these were tickets that were still bought by their parents.
They are, but the parents only want to spend so much money on their kids.
Yeah, I don't know. And also
all right, I'm looking at them right now, Ted. The one-day general admission, name the price. It's like a game show.
Yeah. That's like $179.
What? Oh, shoot. You're not supposed to read it off. Oh, okay, I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, I thought you said the
you
game
broke
show.
The game. All right, that's my fault for sharing my screen and showing Ted the actual price. But okay, general admission, $179. It's kind of expensive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, ticket prices, ever since COVID, ticket prices have jumped. And I mean, particularly the touring music has been particularly hard with particularly hard with COVID, and then deal with both these festivals did not happen in 2020, and then and they have to do more security, and there were a lot of things that when they came back, they had to do stuff like enhanced security, measures for things like worrying about COVID and things like that, and because they have to usually use some sort of city park or government-owned park. There are a lot festivals have a lot of extra.
You justifying the price increase based on what increased cost of COVID proofing these things, or
partly it was just because they would also to get back the workers because they were hiring. I mean, a lot of the people who worked at festivals just went on to other jobs because they couldn't do it for a full year, and because festivals, they happen once a year, it's hard to
right.
So then the renting of equipment, the like, yes, there is COVID proofing. So I mean, it's not as much now, but there was certainly things like that, and because they were worried about it being super spreader events. And also because it's owned by, they're on government property, they have to really be very careful. Have to have lots of security. Have lots of, like, a big thing is preventing underage drinking. They have to have all sorts of, and then the medical EMTs and things, like, they have to have those people there. Because
that's presumably always been the case. I mean, that's not.
Yeah, but it was bumped up after COVID. I think because they were having to do the COVID things, that just increased everything, and it's just this sort of ratcheting up of,
you can see it as a general trend across a lot of industries, just like
yeah.
Not always,
but I think it was it was not the same way for, like, people going into the office. They didn't have the same degree of ratcheting up of security as music festivals, and because music festivals, they're all ages. People get very worried about the kids and stuff like that. Yeah, they have to think of the children. Please think of the children.
You gotta think of the children. While I have this screen of prices in front of me, in front of both of us, let me just point out the VIP one-day ticket at $399, the ultimate one-day package at $2,500.
I don't
these
know.
aren't kids that are buying this stuff. So
no, yeah, that's another thing with a lot of these.
There's
festivals.
like this new breed of, like, hyper luxury adult that's going to these things,
because you can charge. I mean, yeah, you can charge 10 times as much, and while it will distinctly be better, it does not cost 10 times as much to do that. I mean, you see that in, like, sports. The charging for a skybox is a lot more than charging for your cheapest ticket in your bleachers. It's because there are great margins on it. It's actually one thing I've noticed festivals is the ever expanding VIP sections.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was nice at Governor's Ball because they put the press lounge in the VIP area, which made it nice. I mean, it was, but the ever expanding, because you just cordon off part of it, you put a few more things in.
Right. It was about half the front of the stage for the main stage was like VIP land.
Yeah, I would say maybe half. Yeah, probably actually about half. There was also, because there's that thingy that goes break for the main stage. And sort of one half was, I mean, there was some ADA, Americans with Disability Act seating on the VIP side, and the VIP side didn't go as far back, but about half of the front of the stage. And it was a lot easier to get from the main stage to sort of the alternating stage through the VIP. That's well, but in a way that also all those things and then stuff like Ultimate or whatever, maybe they can carry a bit, so then you can make your GA ticket can be a little cheaper for the festival, like they can, because
that's always, like, the promise, right?
That's always a promise, yes, and I know it's not, but I know that they do not want to make it, price out their GA like have their GA so high that they don't have the huge crowd. Every festival wants to have that shot of the big crowd in front of the main stage for the headliner, and that's mostly GA. So I think that does sort of balance it, and also, again, it looks better for when they're pitching it to, like, whatever government agency that owns the park. That, like, oh yes, regular people can still afford to go to this. That it's not just
it's not just like a playground for the ultra wealthy.
And I think that the ultimate stuff also can be, you could have that some if it's like celebrities or things like that, or people who think I've heard that's very big at Coachella.
What?
The like ultimate super VIP, because they'll get LA people and just people like that. Like, I mean, I remember at Lollapalooza one year, I remember speaking to the Killers, it was the year the Killers headline, and there was a video came out from, like, the ultimate super VIP, but it was someone who saw one of the Obama girls, like, dance.
Oh, right.
And it was a thing, and it's like, if you're, I mean, because you don't want them in the GA area because it would cause
I guess.
Not offensive to the girl, but she's super famous and so Secret Service. Like, yes,
although you're probably still gonna have problems in the VIP area. It's not like It's not like those people don't whip out their phones and make
Yeah, oh yeah, no, because I mean the thing
themselves.
was I don't remember which one it was that she seemed, and I think she was like 20 or 19 or something. She seemed kind of drunk, and there was a shot of her being whisked away
Listen,
on
it's
like.
no worse than the Bush daughters. I gotta
Oh
say.
yeah, no, I mean it was. I remember the article I read it that was like, yes, she was doing whatever like 19-year-old girl would do, and she was
Right.
totally like safe. And like the person who videoed was like, "Are you like I don't know if it was which Obama girl it was, but are you ex-Obama?" And you know, it was sort of like they knew who she was, and um, it was funny because it was still like again it was still the Killers, like and it was they were still rocking out to a song that was like 15 years old. I don't know if remember if I don't think Obama was still in office.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's
Well,
so.
this is a whole different topic,
Yeah.
but you know that Obama puts out like his yearly like playlist.
Oh yeah. That's always a
Um,
big deal. It was also because
speaking of like,
Lil Palooza's in Chicago, which is where they're from, obviously. So yeah, I know the which people question
how much he actually listens to that stuff.
I think, though I suspect since he left office, it's more him, just because
Okay.
he's got less other stuff to do.
He doesn't have to politicize his playlist.
Yeah.
Now, VIP like celebrity stories aside, you know, the place where you hear about really decadent like show going experiences and setups is Burning Man. You know, like
Oh yeah,
weirdo
Burning Man's a
Silicon
whole different
Valley.
class of. I don't even think of that as I mean, that's a very different. That's not like really
Like
considered a festival. It sort of is, but that's not what it's based around. Yeah, I've heard the stories about Burning Man.
all right,
So,
but let's pivot back to Governor's
yeah.
Ball.
Something we actually went to.
Because like my initial assumption here, and it was an incorrect assumption, was that there was a lot of overlap on these two bills. You know, because they were close to each other geographically, they were only a week apart. I was like, oh, it would kind of make sense. A week and a half. I mean,
Well, yeah.
either way. It would kind of make a sense for an artist to like leapfrog from one to the other.
Yeah.
But you drew up the list and you only found the following: Blonde Shell Cannons, David with a 4, you know, The Killers, Little Stranger, which I don't think was on Boston Calling. You also put Labyrinth. I don't think that was Boston Calling. But
Okay.
Rap, Chaperone, and Thing.
Yeah.
So that's not
I mean,
that much of a 3 days of music.
Yeah. I think it's. I mean, I've noted that I would say you find usually the very early acts, those will change a lot. And a lot of times festivals try to have different headliners than a nearby festival. It was notable that the Killers were headlining both. I mean, sometimes it's just this band is on tour and they're only going to be headlining. So, but I think festivals try to do that. But that sort of in between area, the 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. or where they're not the headliners, but they're big acts. And you also sometimes they try to catch artists that are sort of on the rise or hot at the moment, like Chappelle Rowan, who had a big thing at Governor's Ball, or Renee Rapp, who was just in the Mean Girls movie. So sometimes they sort of try to catch those acts, festivals like to catch that, and it's good for the artists because they get a lot more exposure, and they're not necessarily sure what their regular concerts like. If you have the hit song of the summer, but no one's ever heard of you before that, you're great at a festival because everyone wants to hear that, and they're interested in the other
Right,
song.
that one song.
They might not go to your regular ticketed show if they don't, if your album isn't out yet or stuff like that. It's and it's I mean the Chappelle Rowan thing at Governor's
People
Ball
were really into her set. I was covering it for Cambridge Day with another writer, Lucy Spangler, who went to that set and was really amazed at the positive response.
Yeah, I mean, she was like, she also just played Bonnaroo, and literally her fans she was sort of at a side stage, like in a tent. There's sort of two, I mean, her fans, there was enough complaining that they moved her to one of the big stages.
Mm-hmm.
At Governor's Ball, she mentioned, first off, she was dressed like Statue of Liberty. It was
okay.
It was a thing, like the biggest
Site specific
of all. Yeah. And because she had but she mentioned, I think she actually turned down playing with the White House for Pride. And it was just sort of made some comments, until everyone is free and things like that. And it was covered, like I saw it in like the New Republic, which is a political magazine. Like I saw that mentioned, like that got a lot of attention. I mean, not just those comments, but her sort of her performance, and it did look great, like the photos and stuff like that. It sort of got it was one of those. It was kind of things that I think festivals are looking for. That sort of break, unique moment. That it's not like Killers are great, but they've been playing for 20 years plus years. I doubt it's going to be as like, oh, this one was a particularly unique performance, whereas the Chappelle Rowan, that's how you pronounce her name, that was like something. I bet Governor's Ball was very happy about that.
Yeah, I heard great things. She had more of a like cabaret aesthetic at Boston.
Yeah. Like in New York, she had her band. I think she had a song debuting called Subway, and so like the rest of her band actually were just up like taxi drivers or sort of taxi cabs. And she later changed to that. And the funny thing is there was one of those sort of not stages, but it's like a gathering place. They've got the lounge things or stuff like that are all, some corporation, like here's the M&M thing, or here's the Absolute.
You mean the Liquid Death Country Club?
Yeah. It's just these, and they've got like the booths, and they're selling liquor and food and what have you, and maybe there's some sort of free swag and stuff. But there was one that was overlooking that stage, was literally called the Subway Lounge. And I guess it was sponsored by the New York City subway system, because it had like a big thing. Like, but I imagine them being very psyched about that. Maybe they knew that was coming. But it was sort of a funny thing, because especially because I would use the subway to get there, and there was kind of a hike from the subway. But
one thing that Boston Calling definitely had that Governor's Ball didn't, the House of Dunkin'. It was a 2-story installation devoted to Dunkin' Donuts, and people were lined up for that thing from start to finish for 3 days straight.
Wow.
I don't know what was inside. I think you got like a free donut or something, maybe a free bucket hat.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So we did not have House of Dunkin'. I mean, there were things I was trying to. There was M&M's did something that people were lined up for. It wasn't just for free M&M's, because that was this separate thing. There was a lot of also people lined. It seemed like they were lined up just for like selfie shots that were like in like behind a specific background. I didn't quite. I sort of was just like, then there were just like lines that you had to like walk. When you're trying to get from like one place to another, and there's a line perpendicular. People that's like perpendipilar,
right? And you got to
have to decide which to go through. That also happened.
Look at the line and see like who looks weakest in like heart and spirit.
And or like where there's this break, like it's or there's like someone at one point I was talking. There was a guy who was just like, all right, everyone's going to be coming through here, like. He was just kind of letting people through, because it was like
I've done that before, where I'll like step back and be like, look, I know like this is a throughway, I will step back. But the problem with that is people take advantage of it. And then they start to like widen the gap, too much.
Yeah. I think it happens with the guy who's like on the line, wants to be that like, I don't really care about this line, like I'm just sort of I'm here to kill time. That it's like not such a big deal. I don't care.
Yeah, but Ted, you got to think of the people in line behind you.
Yeah. I mean, I guess again, like Frosted, it could have been open for like less than a minute. He could have had it open for less than a minute, just because I was crossing at that moment. But anyways,
nice. Yeah, but other standout acts for you?
Well, I remember also Sabrina Carpenter, who played the day before. She had a huge crowd because she'd just been on Saturday Night Live. She has a song Espresso. She's dating some famous Hollywood actor who's going to play Ringo in the Sam Mendes' biopics about all 4 Beatles. He was the guy in Saltburn.
When you say his biopic about all 4 Beatles,
he's doing. I think it's Sam Mendes is doing 4 movies.
All right,
a biopic about each one. And like, I mean, I'm sure there's crossover, like scenes that'll be crossover that'll be shot from. But because they just announced casting.
People just cannot get enough Beatles.
Yeah, well, I think it's and biopics, and this was sort of, but how do you do like a thing? Yeah, but anyway, she was she had a very good time. One of the things I noticed was both with her, Chappelle Rowan, and Sabrina Carpenter, is that they were playing like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock p.m. and they had huge crowds, and they were both playing the main stage. But they were not the headliner, and they were not the act before the headliner at the main stage. They were one more before that, and both times, I think their crowds were bigger than the act that came on next on the main stage.
Right.
It was on the Saturday it was Sabrina Carpenter and then Carly Rae Jepsen, and on the Sunday it was Renee Rapp, and then it was Chappelle Rowan, then Renee Rapp. And not like Carly Rae Jepsen or Renee Rapp had like small crowds, but it was just, and I think it was scheduled when they created the schedules. That was months ago, and they were not like Chappelle Rowan and Sabrina Carpenter were not as big as they got.
Right. Well, it's
that
definitely.
point. I mean, I've seen that at other festivals. I remember seeing like Lorde at like Lollapalooza at like 4 o'clock, and it was like bright and sunny. It was a massive crowd, and it was clear that she had gotten much bigger than when they scheduled her. Yeah, I think it was, but yeah, it was just but also this specific thing, especially thinking about Carly Rae Jepsen, that's someone who, she had her hit song "Call Me Maybe" years ago, but that she's been able to forge a career. She's still a big name that, sort of showcasing how to, and it's not like she's old or something, but like, and she certainly looks great, showcasing how to do, to have a career after you have your hit, your breakout.
Your big breakout hit. Well, hopefully by having another hit.
But just in group,
forthcoming.
Probably an audience, cultivating an audience, and sort of the one thing that I will say, she didn't play "Call Me Maybe" last. There was a couple of songs after that, and like people were leaving. There were some people that definitely left after hearing "Call Me Maybe." That was maybe that was more VIP.
Okay.
Where they're like,
I will say, the Killers, God bless them, played all the fucking hits. They did not pretend to go like deep into the
they know it.
They knew what they were there for.
Yeah, and they still close with "Mr. Brightside," as they've been doing for like 20 years. Like, I was like, am I going to stick around for Mr. It was, I think when I saw them, because it was literally the day before, it had been the 20th anniversary of that first record. So they seemed to play more songs from that record, more of those songs early on. Like Mr. Brightside was at the end, but the other songs were like Somebody Told Me, or they sort of seemed to front load those, I think, possibly, just because of the 20th anniversary and things. And
well, they were very reliable at
for
the hits. Ted, before we run out of time, I want to mention one thing, like shout out Boston Calling for an element that I don't think was at Governor's Ball, which is a strong emphasis on some local homegrown music.
Yeah.
There were 4 stages at Boston Calling. Green was the main one, then blue and red were kind of alternating second stages, and then orange was the real local homegrown one, all local or local adjacent acts. And I think that's something you were saying that Governor's Ball didn't do or hasn't.
Well, I mean, because they just had the 3 stages, and it was like the 3, the main stage, sort of alternate stage, and then there's another stage that was sort of farther off that could be kind of sucked if you were playing that, because it was harder to get to. Like, I remember seeing acts that were playing against Chappelle Rowan, and like no one was there. Like, I think it was Cannons.
Right.
They did not get the crowd.
Just because it was hard to get to the stage?
It was hard to get to the stage, and they were playing against the
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I'd say about the orange stage. It was really difficult to find.
Yeah.
But once you knew where it was, you knew where it was. And I gotta say, like, for these mainstream fests, like, I just don't, if it's big enough, I don't know how you don't set aside some type of stage or something to tip your cap to the local music scene. Because why the hell not? It's a gracious thing that like gets people excited in the local area for the music and builds a kind of connection that you might not otherwise have if you just have a bunch of national artists touring through town.
Yeah, I think it's a question of, well, first off, can you fit in for the extra stage? I mean, literally in your geography of where you have, and how many of the people who are people going to spend the big bucks for the festival for the small local acts? I mean, no, like acts that they can probably see, regular shows of if they're for much, much less. And so, I mean, no, it is a good thing. And also it's just a difference of, I think it's a thing in New York. We're sort of, it's we don't need because Boston, Boston, New England is such a musical heritage and is kind of a specific thing. And it being a college focused thing. I mean, they do it also in Chicago. I mean, they don't have a specific stage for it at Lollapalooza, but they certainly recruit a number of Chicago
I
acts.
remember like living a decade in Chicago, for sure. The Music Fest there tried when they could to have some local engagement for the larger Music Fest. It might not be a specific stage, but they were definitely slotted into the lineup or the bill.
Yeah, I mean, there's a question of if you put them on that like small stage, are you kind of ghettoizing them? That like, oh yeah, we've got these bands and they're all like.
Well, absolutely, yes, of course you are. But I will say for Boston Calling, in their defense, they were not local acts were not exclusively on the Orange stage, but nobody was on the Orange stage if they weren't a local act. So it was kind of the best of both worlds in that sense.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I think it's always a tricky thing of how much do you want to get those festivals. You don't go into the music festival business. You want to cultivate those smaller acts. You want because you want to be about discovering, and because you want to say, like Lollapalooza has its probably its smallest stage is sponsored by BMI, the Music Rights Publishing, and it's small, but they'll have acts like Lady Gaga played there before anyone knew who Lady Gaga was. Chance the Rapper, who's from Chicago, that was his first performance. If you see, there's a great documentary about Lollapalooza that's mostly about the '90s, that era, but it also covers the 21st century version.
Another speaking of Chicago, another thing that that local acts can do around the big fests, even if they're not playing there, what you often saw in Chicago around Pitchfork or around Lollapalooza or some of the other big annual fests was local gigs where like a headliner or a mid-level act would play a date like, either a late night date after the fest or like another like regular time date like in the same weekend and have local headliners. So another way to get in on the big fest crowds without actually
the after show they'll have the official festivals will have the official after shows and they're official, which will be advertised on the website, but the show will always technically start after the festival's ended, because usually festivals end at like 10 p.m. because of sound, because they're outdoors and government. So then they can sort of still fit in. I mean, the question is, can you fit in like more than one band on like a show where the doors are at 10 p.m.? Even if it's on the weekend.
In Boston, it's tough because the T shuts down pretty early. Chicago more often, but I will say the Killers did it this year for Boston Calling. They had a show at the Paradise.
Yeah, they had a similar tiny show at Bowery Ballroom. I guess it was actually on the 20th anniversary. It was the night before they played Ball, so it would have been on the 20th anniversary of Hot Plus. I don't know if there was any opener though.
I'd love to see that done more, like around the Boston Fest at least. But yeah, the timing is tough because of Boston shows don't generally go that late.
Yeah. I mean, New York because of 24. Yeah, because New York because of the 24-hour subway system, and bars can stay open until 4 a.m. I mean,
I hear it's a city that never sleeps, Ted.
Yeah, that's. But so you can sort of more do that, and there's just, and that enables also there are more music venues because they can do more. But yeah, I remember Chicago Lollapalooza had like a ton of those. Would have a ton of those.
And that's not necessarily a town with late public transportation, but the red line and the blue line go all night.
Yeah, and I think it was like I know the what was it like the Metro in Chicago, which is off the red lines right there.
CTA, the Yale.
Yeah, that would always have some where you would see like big acts playing, and it's not like a tiny place, but it's you see really big acts playing.
The Empty Bottle, the Cobra These were all good, like
I
after.
don't know. I don't think the Empty Bottle is still around anymore. I think it got like shut down.
Empty Bottle is not around. Get out of
I
here.
think there was some. I remember there was some issue. I could be wrong about this, or it moved.
Yeah, I think you are, because I still see that on bands' touring lists.
Or I think it was where it was like I think there was a thing where like their landlord like shut the doors on them, and then something happened.
I think you're thinking of Double Door, which is another.
Oh, Double Door. That's probably it. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's another one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Now you're freaking me out. I'll have to look into this more. But Ted, we're running out of time. Any final thoughts on the music mainstream festival landscape?
Oh, well, just one thing is these were all, like you said, it was almost summer. There's our start of spring. One thing I would say, we had great weather at Governor's Ball, and it seemed like at Boston Calling. But yes. I am worried about the climate change and it just getting too hot. Like, even forget about like, the storms that come through, that is a big issue, but just like, or if they'll have to like start shifting them to like earlier or later in the year. I know it's sort of a separate issue, but it's something I always sort of worry about.
Yeah, I mean, I'd completely agree there that that's a worry. I mean, if it wasn't for like press tents and free beverages and and all these sort of things, it would be much harder to cover it. These types of events. So I think about the fans that have to
I mean, now they have like pretty much all festivals will have some sort of free water stations, which is again is something that's a cost that they have to do that maybe they didn't have to do 10 years ago. Though a lot of times it's sponsored, but it's still like those can be kind of difficult to set up, because you really this isn't just throwing down a booth, this is getting piping water in.
Well, okay, we've got a topic for another day, Ted. The environmental shifting landscape of music festivals in global warming times. Yeah. But thank you, Ted, for coming aboard. Again, Ted Chase.
And now for the Hump Nights listings for July. Remember, there's a giveaway we do every month through Hump Day News, through Hump Nights. A list of 7, 8, 9 shows all over town. Ace the quiz, win the tickets for every show for the entire month. And that's a pair, so take someone you love. On July 3rd at Midway Cafe, we got PV, The Infinite Wet Secret, Lesser Birds, and We Became Whales. July 10th at Silhouette Lounge, we've got Orange Peel Mystic, Phantom Ocean, The Forest Room, Scove Cone. On July 12th at the Fourth Wall, Capitol Theater, we've got Pew Pew, Scaffolding, Jim E. Brown. On July 14th, and note this is a matinee show, 3 p.m. start or thereabouts, I think. Check it out. We've got at Midway Cafe, Cape Crush, Loser Circle, Blame It on Whitman, Dear Marion. On July 17th, we've got at Silhouette Lounge, Gossip Collar, Frogs, and Burn Kit. On July 29th, we've got some film. There's Disaster Piece Theater, Z Movie Night at Capitol Theater. Kind of like B Movie Night, but I suppose Z movies are even more of a disaster. On July 31st, another film, Getting It Back, story of Simond at Regent Theater. That's like a prog funk legendary band out of the UK, and this is their story. Thank you to Tiny Oak Booking, Midway Cafe, I Book Things, We Book Things, Silhouette Lounge, Fourth Wall, Capitol Theater, and Regent Theater for being Hump Night partners. And get out there and see a show. Thanks for joining. Visit us at the site at humpday.news for good junk in art, politics, sports, and culture. Follow us on our socials, subscribe to the newsletter, sign up for the backyard, and for the love of God, remember, every day is Hump Day.
I don't need a home address, got a little homie, yes. That's why I ain't flown the nest. That's why I ain't flown the nest. I was built for life on the road, nights all alone, between the white lines, right rhymes for the soul. Different time zones, I'm dreaming. Different time zones, I'm dreaming. But what if the pen he earned became the pen he saved, that helped him write the verse that takes it all away? Cause right now, everything I write down's like a fight till the lights out. I'm in the 9th round of a 9 mic bout, but life's taking the bite out. Am I on the right route? I don't know. drums bleed and a few friends to do it with me. No worries, I'll always come home to my city.